There's a woman named Manuela who used to cut my hair in Laureles, and one afternoon in my second year in Medellín, she laughed at me for a solid 30 seconds without stopping. I'd been telling her about a woman who stood me up the night before. I was doing the American thing, building my case, presenting evidence. She said yes. She said yes enthusiastically. She used an exclamation point, and then she didn't show, and she didn't text. And when I messaged her the next morning, she sent back a voice note that was 90 seconds of pure warmth and contained no apology, and no explanation, and no reference to the fact that I had sat alone at a restaurant for 40 minutes. Manuela let me finish the whole thing, scissors still going. Then she said, "She told you no." I said she told me yes. I have the message. She said, "Luke, she told you no. You just don't have ears for it." I'm Luke. I've spent the last 7 years moving between cities in Latin America, about 18 months of that in Medellín, across 4 separate stays, and that 30 seconds in a barbershop chair in Laureles was the most useful thing anyone has ever said to me in this country. Because what it told me was that for over a year I'd been having conversations where I understood every single word and almost none of the meaning. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the actual mechanism by which American men misread women in Medellín. Not, "She's playing games," not, "She's after your wallet." The structural reason your reads are wrong, and the reason they're wrong in the same direction, every time, without exception, until you fix the thing underneath. If you're considering doing something similar, or you just want to know what it's actually like, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. So, let me tell you why I came back a 4th time. The honest answer is that Medellín is easy, and by year 4 I'd stopped pretending that wasn't the appeal. Flights are cheap, the internet works, the weather never does anything. I had people there. When you've been moving for a while, you stop choosing cities for reasons that sound good in a video, and start choosing them because you already know which pharmacy stays open late. First stay, back in 2019, I lived in Provenza. 1 bedroom, $1,400 a month, rooftop pool I used maybe 4 times, and a building where I'd say roughly 70% of the tenants were foreign. 4th stay, I lived in Laureles. $700 a month, bigger apartment, no pool, and a landlord named Don Jairo, who called me every time the water was going to be shut off and stayed on the phone for 20 minutes afterward. That move, Provenza to Laureles, is the whole video in a nutshell. And I want to be clear that it isn't about authenticity. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Laureles is the real Medellín and Provenza is fake. Provenza is extremely real. It's a real neighborhood full of real Colombians running real businesses that are extremely good at extracting money from foreigners, which is a legitimate business, and I have no complaints about it. The move matters because of what it does to your information. And that's what I want to talk about, because information is the whole game here, and almost nobody frames it that way. Here's the first thing that hits you when you land in Medellín, and it hit me like a truck in 2019. Everyone is warm. The guy at the bakery is warm. The woman at the SIM card counter is warm. The receptionist at your building is warm. Nobody is warm at you in a transactional, have a nice day, American service industry way. They're warm in a way that has texture. They ask you things. They remember what you said last time. They use diminutives. A cafecito. A momentico. And the diminutive is doing emotional work. It's softening the whole exchange, and you feel it even before you know what it is. And if you're an American man who's just landed, here's what your brain does with that. Your brain says, "She likes me." Now understand why it does that. In the United States, warmth is expensive. It's marked. Warmth is a signal precisely because the baseline is neutral to cold. When an American woman is warm to you, that warmth cost her something, and it therefore carries information, and you've spent your entire adult life running an algorithm that reads that warmth as data. That algorithm is finely tuned. It works. In Denver, it worked. Then you land in Medellín, where the baseline is warm, and you run the same algorithm, and it fires on every single input. I want to be really precise about this because this is the load-bearing idea in the whole video. The problem is not that you're stupid. The problem is not that you're arrogant, although you might be. The problem is that you brought a correctly calibrated instrument into an environment with a different baseline. And a correctly calibrated instrument in the wrong environment doesn't give you random errors. It gives you consistent errors, all in one direction. Every read you make will be biased toward "she's more interested than she is." Not sometimes, structurally, every time. And it will feel like perception, because that's what your calibration feels like from the inside. It never feels like a setting. It feels like the world. That's the tension. You're not misreading because you lack skill. You're misreading because your skill is the problem. So let's talk about the register itself, because everyone's warm is only the surface of it. Paisa Spanish, and I'm talking about the way people speak in Medellín and Antioquia generally, is elaborately, structurally polite. That's not a personality trait of the people who speak it. It's a feature of the language as it's used there. The politeness is built into the grammar of the interaction. And one of the things it does is make direct refusal extremely expensive. In American English, no is cheap. It's not free, but it's available. You can say, no thanks, not interested, I'm good, and the social cost is low enough that we do it constantly. Our whole flirting apparatus assumes a functioning no. Directness is our error correction. When we're confused, we escalate to clarity, and clarity is a thing we're allowed to have. In the register I'm describing, no to someone's face is close to unavailable, not forbidden, expensive, costly enough that it's routed around by default. But here's the part that took me a year to understand. The no doesn't disappear. It gets encoded somewhere else. It gets encoded in delay, in vagueness, in enthusiasm that never converts into a commitment. In claro, hablamos. In de pronto. In sí, después te escribo. Yes, I'll write you later, which is one of the most complete refusals in the Spanish language, and which I heard probably 50 times before I understood I was being turned down. The information is all there, all of it. It's transmitted on a channel you're not receiving. And when you don't receive it, you experience the whole thing as a lie. That's the part that makes men bitter. You genuinely, sincerely believe she said yes, and then reneged, because you have a receipt. You have a text message that says, claro que sí. And so the story you tell yourself, and eventually tell other foreigners at a bar in Provenza is, they'll tell you anything, they don't mean it, you can't trust a word. You weren't lied to. You were told no in a language you don't speak, by someone who assumed you spoke it because you were standing there speaking it. That was the woman who stood me up. And here's the thing, after Manuela explained it, I went back and looked at the messages, and the no was everywhere. She'd never named a time, she'd said the day but not the hour. When I proposed 8, she'd sent back a thumbs up and a voice note about something else. She never confirmed. On the day, she went quiet from 2 in the afternoon onward. Every one of those was a word in a sentence. I read the enthusiasm because enthusiasm was the only channel I could receive on, and I ignored 8 consecutive signals because to me, they were noise. Now I want to tell you about the other kind of error, because this is the one nobody talks about and it cost me more. Month 6 or so of my first stay, I was seeing a lot of a woman I met through a co-working space in Manila, the neighborhood, next to Poblado. Her name isn't important. We hung out probably 10 times over a month and a half. And I never made a move, because the entire time I read her as friendly. Warm, sure, but everyone's warm. I'd finally, belatedly, learned to discount warmth, and so I discounted hers. She was doing things I now recognize instantly. She was reorganizing her schedule around mine. She was introducing me to her friends, plural, on separate occasions. She sent voice notes instead of texts, and long ones, at night. She touched my arm when she laughed, and she laughed a lot. Every single one of those was a signal, transmitted on the channel, exactly as clearly as the other woman's silence had been. And I missed all of it, because I'd overcorrected. I'd gone from reading warmth as interest to reading everything as warmth. She eventually got tired and started seeing someone else, and I found out at a party, and I remember standing there genuinely confused. It took me another year to understand what had happened. So the calibration error runs both ways. You miss the no's, and you miss the yeses. But you only notice the first kind, because the first kind stings and the second kind just quietly doesn't happen. You never find out about the yeses you missed. There's no receipt for those. Which means your own experience will teach you exactly half of this lesson and let you go on believing the other half doesn't exist. There's one more piece, and it's structural rather than linguistic. Medellín runs on introduction. The friend of a friend architecture is real and it's load-bearing. Who brought you matters. It matters more than what you look like, it matters more than what you say, and it matters a lot more than any of us want it to, because we come from a culture that runs on cold approach and self-presentation, and we're proud of that. If you cold approach a woman on Provenza on a Friday night, you're operating entirely outside that architecture. And what you'll get is the register reserved for strangers, which, in a high politeness culture, is maximum warmth and zero information. You will have a spectacular interaction. It will feel amazing. It will contain nothing. You'll leave that conversation certain you connected, and you didn't connect with anything, you just got very good service. That's the Provenza trap. It isn't that the women there are mercenary, it's that the whole street is a stranger context, and stranger context in this register is designed to be pleasant and uninformative, and you cannot tell the difference from inside it because pleasant is the only thing your instrument measures. Laureles is different, not because the people are better, but because I lived there, and Don Jairo knew me, and the woman at the fruit stand knew me, and I got introduced to people by other people, and inside that structure, information started flowing. Not because I'd cracked anything, because I'd finally entered the system instead of standing outside it buying drinks. I want to know, how many of you watching this are seriously thinking about doing something similar? Drop the city you're thinking about in the comments. I read all of them. All right. Let's talk about what men actually do with all this, because there's a specific failure mode, and I've watched maybe 200 guys walk into it, and I walked into it myself, and it cost me about $23,000. The failure mode is this. You notice, she isn't telling you things directly. That's correct. You're right. And then you decide the reason is that she can't, that she's shy, that she's too proud, that she's been raised not to ask for what she wants. And so you appoint yourself the guy who figures it out, the one who's perceptive enough to see what she really needs, and provide it without her having to ask. That feels like empathy. I want to be really clear about how good that feels, because if it felt bad, nobody would do it. It feels like you're the only man who ever really saw her. It feels like insight. It's not insight. It's projection, with better branding. When you fill in someone's silence with content, the content comes from you. It has to. There's no other source. You're not reading her, you're reading yourself and calling it her. And this is where I have to tell you about Catalina. 7 months. I was 33, and I'd been in Colombia for about a year, which is exactly the amount of experience required to be dangerous to yourself. And what I decided, early, was that she was too proud to ask for help. She never asked me for anything. I want to be precise about that. In 7 months, she never once asked me for money. Not once. That's not a technicality. That's the entire mechanism. I decided her silence meant need. I decided her dignity was preventing her from saying it. And so I started providing. Her mother's medical thing, then her sister's tuition, then the car, then a business that was going to be a bakery and never became a bakery. Every one of those, I initiated. I brought it up. I insisted, sometimes, past a soft refusal that I read as pride, and that was probably just the register doing exactly what the register does. By the end, it was around $23,000, and the number isn't even the point. The point is what I'd done to her. I'd built an entire interior life for her out of my own assumptions, a proud, struggling woman who needed a good man to see through her defenses. And then I fell in love with that, and she was standing right there the whole time, being a real person I'd stopped listening to. I made her a character, and here's the thing about making someone a character. Characters can be written by anyone, including her. Once I'd handed her the pen, once I'd made it clear that her silence would be interpreted generously and funded promptly, why on earth would she start speaking? I'm not going to tell you she was a villain. Genuinely. I've thought about this for 5 years, and the most honest thing I can say is that I created a situation where the most rational thing she could do was nothing, and then I resented her for doing it. So when someone tells you that the women here won't tell you what they want, and that your job is to figure it out and provide it, understand what's actually being described. That's not a skill. That's an invitation to build a woman out of your own material, and then be surprised when the real one underneath doesn't match. Every guy who's been burned here badly, and I mean the ones who leave bitter and go make angry videos about it, went through that exact door. Not the money. The door. And the second thing men get wrong, which is downstream of the first, they treat the indirectness as an obstacle instead of a language. You hear it constantly in Poblado. She's playing games. No, she is speaking, fluently, precisely, with a vocabulary that has more resolution than yours does. She is transmitting more information per sentence than you can currently parse. The reason it looks like a game is that you can hear something is happening and you can't tell what, and she's manipulating me is a much more comfortable conclusion than I'm illiterate. I'd say most of the foreign men I've watched in Medellín over 18 months never make it past that. They arrive, they get consistent direction errors, they experience those errors as deception, and within about 4 months they've built a whole worldview out of it. And that worldview is load-bearing for them, because the alternative is that they spent 4 months confidently misunderstanding everything, which is a much worse thing to be. Third thing, and it's the one nobody wants to hear, none of your reads are happening in a vacuum. There's a money gradient in the room. You didn't create it, you can't turn it off, you can't out-charm it, and it's affecting the signal before it ever reaches you. Every warm thing that happens to you is happening inside that gradient. That doesn't mean it's fake. It means you don't get to know, and you have to be an adult about not knowing, and men who can't tolerate not knowing will resolve it in one of two directions. She's an angel or she's a mercenary, and both of those are the same mistake, which is refusing to sit with ambiguity. So what actually works? Let me be tactical, because everything I've said so far is diagnosis, and diagnosis without treatment is just complaining. Learn Spanish, real Spanish. Not restaurant Spanish, not Duolingo, not I get by. I mean the level where you can hear the difference between no puedo and ahorita no puedo and uy, es que ahorita está complicado, which are 3 completely different sentences that all translate to I can't. This is the single biggest lever, and it's not close, and I resisted it for a year because I could get by. Getting by is the trap. Getting by means you receive the content and lose the register, and the register is where all the information lives. You are not going to read this culture through translation. The thing you need is in the part that doesn't translate. I got functional around month 8 of my second stay, and it was like someone turned the lights on in a room I'd been walking around in for 2 years. Second, make no cheap, and mean it. This is the counterintuitive one, and it changed everything for me. In a register where refusal is expensive, you get real answers by lowering the price of refusal yourself. So you say the thing, and then you build her an exit, and the exit has to be real. Si no te provoca, tranquila, en serio, no pasa nada. If you're not feeling it, no problem, seriously. And then, this is the hard part, you have to actually mean it. Because if you say it and then sulk, or push, or bring it up again, you've just proven that no is expensive with you specifically, and she'll never spend it again, and you're back to reading tea leaves for the rest of the relationship. What you get when you do this consistently is a woman who will start telling you things directly, because you've made directness safe, which, incidentally, is the actual answer to the question everybody's really asking. Not, how do I decode what she won't say? You make it cheap to say. That's the whole technique. It's not clever, and it doesn't feel like a hack, and it works better than anything else I've found in 7 years. Third, stop treating the enthusiastic yes as data. It isn't. It's politeness. It's the equivalent of, we should grab lunch sometime. The data is the day of confirmation. Text her the morning of. If it's real, you get a fast answer with a specific time. If it's not, you get warmth and vagueness. That's not her being flaky. That's her answering you clearly. Learn to read the reply, and you'll stop sitting alone in restaurants. Fourth, watch what happens, not what's said. Did she reorganize anything for you? Did she introduce you to a friend? Did she text you first, unprompted, about nothing? Those are worth more than any sentence anyone will say to your face. Behavior isn't subject to the politeness constraint. Behavior is expensive, so behavior is honest. Fifth, get inside a structure. Take the slow route. Get a barber, get a gym, get a co-working space, get invited to somebody's mother's birthday. This is slow, and it feels like it's not working, and it's the only thing that actually works. The number of foreigners who won't do this because it isn't optimized is enormous, and they're all in Provenza, having spectacular conversations that contain nothing. And here's the honest structural note. If you're here for 2 weeks, none of this is available to you. You can't learn the language in 2 weeks, and you can't get inside a structure in 2 weeks. What's available to you in 2 weeks is the stranger register, which is warm and pleasant and uninformative. And if you build a theory of Colombian women out of 2 weeks of stranger register, you will build a theory that is completely, confidently wrong. The men I've watched do well here have a specific profile, and it's not what you'd guess. They're not the best-looking guys. They're not the richest. And honestly, the richest do the worst. They're patient. They can tolerate ambiguity without resolving it. They learned the language. They're comfortable not knowing where they stand for a while, which sounds like a small thing and is actually the whole thing, because this environment will not tell you where you stand on your schedule. The ones who fail need immediate legibility. They need every interaction to resolve. They came from a culture where you can escalate to clarity, and when they can't, they experience the ambiguity as resistance, and then as disrespect, and then as evidence. That's the arc. I've watched it maybe 200 times. It takes about 4 months. Here's what I actually think. After 18 months across 4 stays, there is no code. There's a language, and the difference matters, because a code is something you crack once, and then you have it. And a language is something you're bad at for a long time, and then less bad, and then eventually you dream in it. Everybody wants the first one. Everybody's selling the first one. The first one doesn't exist. The warmth you're feeling is real. It's just not about you. It's the baseline. And the second you understand that the warmth is the water and not a message, you stop drowning in it and start actually looking for the message, which is there, constantly, in the delays and the vagueness and the voice notes and the confirmations that don't come. You've been getting told things this whole time, clearly, precisely, by people who assumed you could hear. And the thing about, she's too shy to ask, I'll say it one more time, because it's the most expensive idea in this country, and it's the one that gets sold hardest. If you find yourself thinking you know what she wants and she just can't say it, stop. That's not perception. You are alone in a room with your own imagination, and you're about to spend 7 months and $23,000 finding that out, and the worst part won't be the money. The worst part will be realizing you never met her. You met a woman you wrote, and she let you, because you never gave her a reason not to. Nobody here is being coy with you. You showed up with a dictionary for a different language and decided the problem was her. If you got something from this, hit subscribe. I'm in a different city every few months, and the next few videos get into the stuff that happens after the honeymoon phase ends. Money, visas, and what it actually costs to stay. See you on the road.